Hello, good day. Today we are going to learn about the Prime Minister of India. In the scheme of parliamentary system of government provided by our constitution, the president is the nominal executive authority and the prime minister is the real executive authority. The president is the de jure executive and the prime minister is the de facto executive. In other words, the president is the head of the state, while the prime minister is the head of the government. The appointment of the Prime Minister is not specifically mentioned in the Constitution. Article 75 of our Indian Constitution says only that the Prime Minister shall be appointed by the President. However, this does not imply that the President is free to appoint anyone as the Prime Minister. In accordance with the conventions of the parliamentary system of government, the President has to appoint the leader of the majority party in the Lok Sabha as the Prime Minister of India. But when no party has a clear majority in the Lok Sabha, then the president may exercise his or her personal discretion in the selection and appointment of the Prime Minister of India. In such a situation, the president usually appoints the leader of the largest party or coalition in the Lok Sabha as the Prime Minister and asks him or her to seek a vote of confidence in the House, that is the Lok Sabha, within 1 month. This discretion was exercised by the President for the first time in 1979 when President Neelam Sanjeeva Reddy appointed Charan Singh, the coalition leader, as the Prime Minister after the fall of the Janata Party government under the Prime Ministership of Morarji Desai. There is also one more situation when the president may have to exercise his or her individual judgment, often called discretion, in the selection and appointment of the prime minister. That is, when the prime minister in the office dies suddenly and there is no obvious successor. This happened in 1984 when our Prime Minister Indira Gandhi was assassinated. The then President Zail Singh appointed Rajiv Gandhi as the Prime Minister by ignoring the precedent of appointing a caretaker Prime Minister. Later on, the Congress Parliamentary Party unanimously elected Rajiv Gandhi as its leader. However, if on the death of an incumbent prime minister, the ruling party elects a new leader, the president has no choice but to appoint him or her, this new leader, as the prime minister. In 1980, the Delhi High Court ruled that the constitution does not require that a person must prove his or her majority in front of the Lok Sabha before he or she is appointed as the Prime Minister. The President may first appoint a person as the Prime Minister and then ask him or her to prove their majority in the Lok Sabha within a reasonable period. This has happened multiple times, for example, with Prime Minister Charan Singh in 1979, with Prime Minister VP Singh in 1989, with Prime Minister Chandrasekhar in 1990, with Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao in 1991, with Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee in 1996, with Prime Minister Deve Gowda in 1996 again, with Prime Minister I.K. Gujral in 1997, and again with Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee in 1998, who were appointed as prime ministers in this particular way. In 1997, the Supreme Court held that a person who is not a member of either house of the parliament can be appointed as prime minister for 6 months, within which he or she should become a member of either house of the parliament. Otherwise, he or she ceases to be the prime minister. Constitutionally, the Prime Minister may be a member of any of the two houses of the Parliament. For example, there were three Prime Ministers, Indira Gandhi, Devi Gowda, and Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, who were members of the Rajya Sabha as Prime Ministers. In Britain, on the other hand, the Prime Minister cannot be from the upper house or the House of Lords, but actually must be from the lower house, that is the House of Commons. Before the Prime Minister enters upon his or her office, the President administers to this new person, him or her, the oaths of office and the oath of secrecy. In his or her oath of office, the Prime Minister swears to bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of India, to uphold the sovereignty and integrity of India, to faithfully and conscientiously discharge the duties to the office, and to do right to all manner of people in accordance with the Constitution and the law, without fear or favor, affection or ill will. And in the oath of secrecy, the Prime Minister swears that he or she will not directly or indirectly communicate or reveal to any person or persons any matter that is brought under his or her consideration or becomes known to him or her as a union minister, except as may be required for the due discharge of his or her duties as the Prime Minister or any such minister. The term of the Prime Minister is not fixed and technically holds office during the pleasure of the President. We very often come across this term, or we come across this phrase that the term of the Prime Minister is 5 years, but that is actually wrong. There is no fixed term for a Prime Minister in India. The Prime Minister technically holds office during the pleasure of the President. However, this does not mean that the President can dismiss the Prime Minister at any time. That is why I use the word technically. The President cannot just dismiss the Prime Minister whenever he or she wants. So long as the Prime Minister enjoys majority support in the Lok Sabha, the Prime Minister cannot be dismissed by the President. But if the Prime Minister loses the confidence of the Lok Sabha, he or she must resign. Or, in case that does not happen, the President can dismiss him or her. The salary and allowances of the Prime Minister are determined by the Parliament from time to time. Right? He or she, the Prime Minister, gets the salary and allowances that are ordinarily payable to a member of Parliament. Additionally, there are some other facilities he or she is entitled to as the Prime Minister of India. To come to the understanding of the powers and functions of the Prime Minister, we have to understand the powers and functions of the Prime Minister do not come directly as his or her position as the Prime Minister, but rather comes in three different ways. in various relationships that the Prime Minister holds with other positions of power, can we understand better the powers and functions of the Prime Minister. In this, the first understanding, the first idea can be the functions and powers of the Prime Minister in relation to the Council of Ministers. The Prime Minister enjoys the following powers as the head of the Union Council of Ministers. The Prime Minister recommends people or persons who can be appointed as ministers by the President. The President can only appoint those persons as ministers who are recommended by the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister allocates and reshuffles the various portfolios among ministers. The Prime Minister can ask any minister to resign or advise the President to dismiss his or her in case of a difference of opinion. The Prime Minister presides over all the meetings of the Council of Ministers and greatly influences its decisions. The Prime Minister guides, directs, controls, and coordinates the activities of all the ministers and the entire Council of Ministers. The Prime Minister can bring about the collapse of the Council of Ministers simply by resigning from his or her own office of Prime Minister. Since the Prime Minister stands at the head of the Council of Ministers, other ministers cannot function when the Prime Minister resigns or dies in office. In other words, the resignation or death of an incumbent Prime Minister automatically dissolves the Council of Ministers, and thereby generates a vacuum. The resignation or death of any other minister, on the other hand, merely creates a vacancy which the Prime Minister may or may not fill according to his or her discretion. The second set of powers and functions of the Prime Minister is in relation to the President of India. The Prime Minister has several powers that he or she enjoys in relation to the President. Number one, the Prime Minister is the principal channel of communication between the President and Council of Ministers. As this communication channel, it is the duty of the Prime Minister to communicate to the President all the decisions of the Council of Ministers relating to the administration of the affairs of the Union and any proposals that come up. For legislation, the Prime Minister must also communicate any information relating to the administration or the affairs of the Union for proposals for legislation as and when the President may call for. Or if the President so requires, the Prime Minister must submit for the consideration of the Council of Ministers any matter on which a decision has been taken by a minister but has not been considered by the Council. The Prime Minister advises the President in regards to the appointment of several important officials like the Attorney General of India, the Comptroller and Auditor General of India, the Chairperson and members of the UPSC or the Union Public Service Commission, the Chief Election Commissioner and Election Commissioners, the Chairperson and members of the Finance Commission, and many such important official positions. Coming to the third set of powers and functions that the Prime Minister has comes from his or her position as the leader of the lower house of the Indian Parliament, that is, the leader of Lok Sabha. In this capacity, the Prime Minister enjoys the following powers. The Prime Minister advises the President with regard to the summoning and proroguing of the sessions of the Parliament. The Prime Minister can recommend dissolution of the Lok Sabha to the President at any time. The Prime Minister announces government policies on the floor of the House. And besides all of these powers, the Prime Minister, because of his or her support from a majority of the Lok Sabha, practically commands all the functions of the Lok Sabha and thereby often the Parliament of India. In addition to the above mentioned three roles of the Prime Minister in relation to the Council of Ministers, in relation to the President, and in relation to the Parliament, there are some other various roles that the Prime Minister has to undertake. And these are that the Prime Minister is automatically the chairperson of the Niti Aayog. The Niti Aayog is a body which succeeded the Planning Commission. The Prime Minister is also the chairperson of the National Integration Council, the Interstate Council, the National Water Resources Council, and various other bodies. The Prime Minister has a significant role in shaping the foreign policy of our country. The Prime Minister is the chief spokesperson of the Union government. The Prime Minister is the crisis manager in chief at the political level during emergencies of any kind. As the leader of the nation, the Prime Minister meets various sections of people in different states and receives memoranda from them regarding their problems. And so on, and many such other functions. The Prime Minister is also the leader of the party which is in power and is the political head of all services. Thus, the Prime Minister plays a very important and crucial role in the politico-administrative system of our country. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar stated that if any functionary under our constitution is to be compared with the US President, then that person would be the Prime Minister and not our President. The various comments made by eminent political scientists and constitutional experts on the role of the Prime Minister in Britain also holds good in the Indian context, which help us better understand the role and powers of the Prime Minister of our country. Lord Morley has described the Prime Minister as the primus inter pares, which is a Latin phrase which means the first among equals. And Lord Morley has also described the Prime Minister as the keystone of the cabinet arch. You know, there are arches and the central stone is the keystone. The Prime Minister can be described as the keystone of the cabinet arch. The head of the cabinet is the primus inter pares and occupies a position which, so long as it lasts, is one of exceptional and peculiar authority. Herbert Madison has said that as the head of the government, the Prime Minister is the primus inter pares, but it is today far too modest in appreciation of the Prime Minister's position. Sir William Harcourt has described the Prime Minister as a moon among lesser stars. Jennings has said that the Prime Minister is rather a sun around which the planets revolve, the keystone of the constitution, and all roles in the constitution laid to the prime minister. Lasky has said on the relationship of the prime minister and the cabinet that the prime minister is central to its formation and central to the life and death of the cabinet. The prime minister is described as a pivot around which the entire government machinery revolves. Munro has called the prime minister as the captain of the ship of state. The role of the prime minister in the British parliamentary governance is important and very similar to that in the Indian context. And thus R.H. Grossman says that the post-war epoch has been the final transformation of the cabinet government into what can be described as the prime ministerial form of government. Right? This comes to the end of our understanding of the position and powers of the Prime Minister of India. Thank you again for listening patiently, and I will see you next time. Have a great rest of the day.